Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to Pangolin, the conservation podcast. The show dedicated to exploring and amplifying the world's underappreciated conservation stories. The stories that inspire me, and I hope will inspire you too. I'm your host, Jack Baker, and thank you for joining me once again for another fabulous episode of our Africa series. This time, we are turning our attention to the wonderful country of Madagascar to talk about the lemurs, which I'm so excited about because there is no excuse to not cover lemurs on an Africa series. However, some of you may remember that a couple of years ago now, actually, we did a whole series about lemurs in collaboration with the Lemur Conservation Network. And so I thought what I would do is, instead of giving you kind of a new episode this week, we're going to return to one of those older episodes and reflect on that, think about that, and show an organisation which has been nothing but kind and generous and lovely to me some more love. The Lemur Conservation Network have supported the show so much since that series and always made the effort to post kind things and say nice things and do nice things. And so yeah, we're going to revisit one of those amazing episodes. The first episode of that series was with the amazing Lucía Rodríguez Valverde, who gave us an intro to the wonderful country of Madagascar and how complicated conservation can be there, but also how wonderful the kind of place is and how special the wildlife of the country is. And so I thought it kind of perfectly encapsulated the series, it perfectly kind of kicked off the series, and it's the one that I kind of really want to revisit today, and I hope you will revisit and love as much as I love, because I think it's a really special episode. Of course, as well, please go to the social media of the Lemur Conservation Network, show them some love, follow them, support their work, do amazing things. I'll put all of their websites and everything in the description of this episode, so while you're listening, you can go and do that. You can also follow us at Pangolin Podcast while you're doing all of those things. And yeah, if you follow the podcast wherever you're listening, you should do that and then go back and listen to the whole series they helped us produce, because they were just the best collaborators we could have asked for. And yeah, please go back and show them some love. So I think it's episodes like 20 through 31 are all lemur content. So if this really like gets you hooked on lemurs, please go back and listen to the rest of them, because all of the other guests that series, Marnie and everybody, were just wonderful. So please go back and have a listen. Now, before I spend too long hyping it up, I think I should just let this episode play, let you appreciate it for everything that it is. And yes, I guess until I get to speak to you again soon, thank you so much for listening, and enjoy. Let's get started. So, welcome back to the show. I am now joined by Lucía Rodríguez Valverde, the director of the Lemur Conservation Network. She's here to tell us all about this incredible organisation and introduce us to the world of lemur conservation. So, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Jack. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you. And I guess the first thing I always like to do, just to get us started, is if you could introduce yourself to the listeners and tell them a little bit about yourself, your background.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Lucía Rodríguez Valverde. I was born and raised in Costa Rica, but I'm currently living in Cambridge in the United Kingdom. I am a conservation psychologist, and my experience has been kind of all over the place. A lot of community work and a lot of with endangered species. But I've been mostly working with lemurs since 2016.
Amazing. That's really interesting, and actually something. Just before I was going to jump immediately onto the direct kind of your role in the Lemur Conservation Network, but something that I need to ask, because it sounds very interesting. What exactly is a conservation psychologist? Does that involve?
Well, so we have to think about conservation as a multidisciplinary field, right? If we just stick with ecologists and biologists making conservation work, we're losing sight of so many aspects and importance element in conservation. It has to be multidisciplinary from economists, from a lot of social scientists. So when I say that I am a conservation psychologist, this means a lot of the human factor of conservation. It wouldn't work with humans and with communities and individuals into conservation. We're just doing half of the work, right? So we need social scientists that have the tools and the resources and the knowledge to know how to actually address these scenarios. And it can be from very different and levels of stakeholders, from doing community work to policymakers, and even in your own NGO and with your own staff. It's a resource that I use frequently. But people do ask me all the time, like, what do you do therapy to lemurs? Like, no. No, I don't. I wish, but I don't. But yeah, we have to think about conservation of something much bigger than what it has been in the last 50 years. But it's coming up along, and now you see more social scientists and economists and even urban planning planners all over the place that are working in conservation. So that's a really exciting moment to be.
And it's a good actually thing to highlight at the start of this series because looking forward, we've got people come are going to be joining us on the show who focus in kind of human health and also mental health and tourism and education and all of these things. So it's interesting that that kind of is the perspective that you come from as well, and it's an important perspective, I think. And yes, something that I'm exceptionally interested in because my background was in politics and international relations first,
Mm.
and then I went into conservation for my master's. So it's really interesting to me. And I guess it also leads us nicely onto the Lemur Conservation Network because a lot of the people we're going to be talking to, as I said, aren't necessarily focused directly in labs and in kind of a
Mhm.
strictly scientific sense. Could you give us a bit of an introduction to the Lemur Conservation Network more generally? What is it? And
Sure.
kind of, yeah, tell the listeners a little bit about it.
Okay, so the Lemur Conservation Network, the LCN, was a project. It started as a project by the Madagascar section of the ICN Primate Specialist Group, and it was founded by Dr. Kim Roeder and Lynn Venard as a way to respond to the Lemur Action Plan in 2013. The project was founded in 2014 as an online funding guide and a platform where a lot of the actions needed in the Lemur Action Plan could be addressed. So it becomes a way to become a resource and a space of collaboration for different organizations doing lemur conservation work and actually try to enhance and showcase their work and to actually promote collaboration. We're happy to say that since January this year, we have become an NGO registered in the United States. So that's a really exciting time for us. So, what do we exactly do? Well, the Lemur Conservation Network is a network of different members, conservation organizations, zoos, research stations, a lot of different stakeholders, local actors that work for lemur conservation. So we really try just to enhance their work, showcase their work, try to channel donors, volunteers, and actually try to fill certain gaps that we feel and they tell us that they have. So, for
Mhm.
example, we're currently working on a SOS, a Save Our Species grant, where we're just training 8 local Malagasy NGOs on communication and conservation technology tools in order for them to actually have their own social media presence, for example, how to communicate effectively their work, and how from there they can actually get their own donations and their own volunteers and their own projects initiatives. So that has been really, really exciting. Also, we help with the coordination and the promotion of the World Lemur Day and the World Lemur Festival, which I'm sure we're going to talk more about that later on. And it's been really exciting because every time we get more people coming up to us trying to knock on our doors and do some collaborations within different areas, and it's really exciting to be there. And I invite you all to go to our website. I think later on we're going to share those details.
Yes, yes. We'll make sure and share all the details later. And for anyone who's interested now, I'll put the link in the description for this episode. So even while we're talking, you can be having a look through everything and looking at all of the pictures and stories and organizations that are involved because there's a lot on there. And you'll doing the research for this, you will, I can speak from experience, you will go down a rabbit hole because you start looking at one thing and then you find something else and then you'll find something else and that's something
Yes.
else. And it's just, yes, I end up
Yeah.
just a lot of my time looking at, I see one species of lemur, and the more species you look at and the more different types, the more bizarre and wonderful they get. And you end up just spending
It
quite
is.
a while going, why
Yeah,
is
we
it
have
like
an
that?
active social media. We have active social media platforms because we have no idea how big the lemur fan base in the world is. Like we have a lot of our work is actually addressing the international community and try to promote them to actually donate and invest their time and energy for lemur conservation. And it's something really really big because lemurs are so cool. So when you get to our social media pages, I'm sure you're going to become part of that lemur fan base that we're talking about.
Yes, yes. And I guess that leads me nicely onto my next question. Aside from being very cute and very cool and you being a fan, what was the reason that I guess you wanted to get involved in lemur conservation, and specifically I guess an organization like this that kind of brings all these people together and works in this way and collaborates like that? What is the what was that, why was that interesting to you?
Well, to make long story short, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with baobabs, which are huge trees. There are several species in Madagascar, and I was really, really, really keen to go to Madagascar. I was like 10 when I discovered them, and reading more about baobabs, I discovered Madagascar and its fabulous biodiversity and nature, and all the weirdness and magic that there is in such a place like Madagascar. And I was really keen to go. So I decided to do some volunteer work. And I contacted Dr. Kim Rauter actually, and she introduced to me the Lemur Conservation Network. So I actually chose a couple of the members and spent some time volunteering in Madagascar for a couple of months, for a few months. And when I got back to Costa Rica, I felt highly committed and passionate about lemur conservation and Madagascar conservation because it is truly a magical place. It is truly a place where it's worth your attention and your energy and your actions. And I was offered a volunteer position at the LCN, and I took it without a bit because I really do believe in its core value that is bringing everyone together. And that is something that, as a conservationist, I feel constantly frustrated because there's a lot of competition. The how conservation is funded is complicated. So we maybe fight for the same species, for the same project site, for the same approach. We don't communicate as much. We don't teach each other resources and knowledge. So if we want to tackle something as complicated as conservation overall and then conservation in Madagascar, we have to do it together. There's no other way. It has to be multi stakeholder, multi level, multidisciplinary efforts in order to work. And more so in a place like Madagascar because it's huge. Madagascar is so big and it can be very divided. It has 18 ethnicities with 18 different dialects, 18 different core values. Everything changes. So if we are not united, we are not going to do a lot of, because many times people are doing the same efforts with little results instead of coming up together, collaborating, learning from each other to actually have real impact in Madagascar.
Mhm.
So I am a big fan of our partnership approach and how we are able to learn from each other and just do stuff, have actions, implement solutions, or try to at least.
Yes, yeah, I think it's and it's a really important and interesting thing to do because if this idea of, I think, yeah, there's a lot of competition for funds or for attention or for things in the world of conservation that working together makes it a much more kind of constructive process, and hopefully overall a much more kind of, I was going to say productive process where you're able to then have all these impacts, and yeah, make real active change by working together in solidarity. Um, and it made me laugh actually at the start when you were talking about baobabs. I don't know if this is a common thing for conservationists because I also, one of my first, I don't know what it is about them, but there's something about them that's just fascinating and interesting and bizarre. And I remember the first time I ever saw one, I was in South Africa and we were in the Botanic Gardens in Cape Town, and it was one of those things that the people I was with had no idea why I was so excited. But I was like, my whole life I've wanted to see one of these in real. They're just incredible things. So yes,
Yeah, they're magical trees. Don't even get me started there because actually it's very funny because Dr. Sen Andriatsarasa, which is our Madagascar coordinator, she
mhm,
has a PhD on baobabs and she
yes.
works with us. And we connect a lot about baobabs and the lemurs and their role. But it's very funny because, yeah, baobabs are amazing, amazing, amazing trees. And you can see 6 species in Madagascar. So that's pretty cool.
Mhm. Yes, it's we actually have an episode coming up in a few weeks' time, all about them because we had Seno on, and it was just a little bit of spoilers for the listeners. I don't always record these in order, so I can tell you that the episode on baobabs is very very interesting now, and you should listen to it because it is it's yes, they're incredible, incredible, incredible things. But before we go on a tangent down that way, this is see, I warned them that you'll go down rabbit holes if you go onto the
Yes.
website. But before we go off on that tangent, I'll make them wait for that chat for a few more weeks. But I wondered, we've touched on it briefly, and we've kind of touched on why there's all these organizations kind of working together to save the wildlife of Madagascar and protect it and conserve it. But we haven't really touched on yet what the situation is in Madagascar and why this work is essential and why the collaboration is needed and things. So I wondered if you could tell the listeners a little bit about what is the situation kind of generally, maybe not specifically for lemurs, but just generally in
Sure.
Madagascar. What's the situation?
Well, first to give you a little bit of context, Madagascar is huge. It's the fourth biggest island in the world. It is almost the size of Texas. I think people don't realize this as much. It is so big, and it geographically was isolated over 85 million years ago. So all of its evolution and all of its species, it's completely different. Like almost 90% of Madagascar's biodiversity is endemic. This means that they only exist in Madagascar. So it's actually pretty cool as a foreign because you're actually seeing everything new. I live in Costa Rica, which is a really high biodiverse country, but nothing is the same. Very few things are the same. So that for me is really interesting. It was very attractive. So it really changes in species and ecosystems. We can have from spiny forests with huge baobabs and ringtail lemurs eating from the cactus, just walking over the cactus, and then we have very heavy rainforests filled with vegetation and life. So it's really diverse and there's a lot of biological variety, which
Hmm.
it's always fun. And you can even see so many fossils and ancient species that were there. So, like historically, evolutionary, biodiversity wise, it's so interesting. It's so um, enormous just to look and to see and experience. Unfortunately, the situation with wildlife in Madagascar is pretty dire. Madagascar faces very strong threats that has an environmental and humanitarian crisis in Madagascar at the moment. We have threats of habitat loss and degradation from crops production, from slash and burn agriculture, from mining, from logging. There's also the pet trade, the bushmeat trade.
Hmm.
There's also climate change. Climate change is hitting really hard Madagascar.
Hmm.
Actually, at the moment in the south, droughts are driving over 1 million people to famine. So it's really hard. And this is something that just evidence and something that we want to tackle a lot as Lemur Conservation Network is to tackle the environmental crisis going on as a social crisis, as a humanitarian crisis. Because if we don't connect both of these, we're just playing one side of the story, right? We're just playing trying to tackle and address one side of the solution. So yes, it's and this is very important and significant, and this involves the world, not only Madagascar or Africa, because that level of endemism in Madagascar is so special that I personally believe we all have a certain responsibility to do something about
Hmm.
it. Mhm.
Yes, I think yeah, it's something that's so rare and unique, and yes, and I think beyond even if I don't know why you would be listening to this series if you didn't love animals on some level, but even if you're interested more in the humanitarian side, there's so much work there that is important and goes on, and as you said about the famine, and there's so much going on there that I think, yeah, we can all be involved in some way or another to try and make a difference and make it better. And it doesn't necessarily have to be. The more that I speak to people, the more I realize you don't have to be a scientist or a
Mm,
conservationist by career to make these changes and be involved. You can do things like listen to this show and tell everyone you know about these
exactly.
stories and spread the stories and um, yes, get as many people as you can thinking and talking about these things. And yeah, that can even start to make a difference. But yes, that's kind of a general overview, and we'll come back to kind of advice on perhaps specifically what people can do to help your work and the work in Madagascar. But if we could go before we go to advice and things, I wondered if we could get slightly more specific, because you are the Lemur Conservation Network. I wondered if we could talk about the situation for lemurs more specifically.
Yes.
And yes, could you tell us a little bit more about, I guess, for anyone, I think they're very popular, but people might not know a lot about them. So could you just to start give us a little introduction to lemurs? What are lemurs for anyone who doesn't know?
Well, lemurs are so freaking interesting. And I might geek out a bit here. I think it's evident that I'm kind of a geek with lemurs. But as you said, like when you started just going through our website and social media and you see every species, it's more and more interesting every time you go there. And it's because there's such a variety of lemur species and they're all so different with size, behavior, everything. So, for starters, do you know that lemurs are the oldest world primates in the world? Like, their story started 17 million years ago. There were lemurs roaming across Africa with dinosaurs at the same time. That is super cool.
I did not know that.
Yes,
I've recorded a whole podcast series about lemurs,
yes.
and I didn't know that. That's incredible. That's
It is incredible.
yeah.
So they're estimated around 112 lemur species divided into 5 families. But there is record of at least, I might be wrong with this number, but uh, there's record about 8 extinct lemurs that we have found fossils around Madagascar. There was one that was the size of a gorilla. Yes, and so it's really really cool to see. There's a bunch of extinct animals in Madagascar that were so cool, but 2,000 years ago, when humans got into Ireland, they disappeared. That's what theory says. We are not sure, right? It's very difficult to have the exact sign of this. But they're really, really cool and they're very different. So, for example, the smallest lemur species, the Madame Bird mouse lemur, and it can weigh up to 30 grams. And then the biggest lemur species, the Indri, that can weigh up like 9.5 kilograms. So they're so different. Some, instead of walking, they kind of dance around, which are the shifakas. Others are nocturnal. Some are catamero. Many lemur species are female dominant. So you're never getting bored with lemurs. Never, never, never. It's very cool, and you always like I always have like certain seasons. This season really focus on this species, and then I discover this and that about this other, so I get obsessed with the other one, and it's pretty cool. You have more than 100 species to geek around. So
That's the thing is that yes, whenever you think you've seen the one that is the most interesting or the most beautiful or the most whatever, you then find another one that you're kind of like, now this is my favorite. It's a real it's and it changes daily for me, I think. And I can see why, yes, it's something that you would be passionate about because there are so many things and they're just yes, incredible, wonderful, important things, and so diverse. And my next question, I think, is now going to be a difficult one, and I think I know the answer because there are 100 species, so they must do 112 different species. So they must do a lot of different things. And my next question was going to be, what is the importance of lemurs in a kind of ecological sense? But I guess they fill so many different roles. That's kind of a hard question to answer.
I mean, in a nutshell, we just have to consider that we are all connected
Yeah.
and it's an ecosystem, right? And that every species has a role. So when one piece of the puzzle is out, the puzzle won't be complete or will have certain adaptations later on that cannot benefit the overall ecological well-being. So
Mm,
it's the same goes with lemurs. So for example, one of the things that are very important and makes them such an important role in ecologically speaking is that there are seed dispersers and pollinators. So they're dispersing seeds and pollen all over the area. maintaining and growing forests. So in order to have oxygen production, food production, we need healthy forests. And in order to have healthy forests, we need vital species such as lemurs to do actually the work. So you can actually connect the importance of a lemur to climate change and to human well-being. And that is something we do a lot of education resources and educational programs, and a lot of our programs are right directed to exactly this, because it's really really unfair for us and the international community to ask for Malagasy people to just leave the forest intact. Don't poach down lemurs. Don't touch them. Leave them there because they're so beautiful and interesting. No, it's not fair because the humanitarian situation in Madagascar it's so dire that many families just have to hunt that lemur to eat. And it's really
Mhm.
unfair for the government or for the international community to actually impose rules for that without giving solutions.
Mhm.
So what we try to do is just to try to provide the information and the knowledge about the benefit of lemur conservation into local communities and overall well-being.
Mhm. Yes, yes, and it's one of those things that yeah, because they do fulfill these roles, it may make them important to you, but if the importance your family is also important to you, and your family will always take priority over an animal that you don't know perhaps a lot about, or you don't like you will it's such a difficult, complicated kind of conundrum that how do you weigh those up against each other? How
Exactly.
do you kind of and from an outsider perspective, it's kind of easy for me to say one thing, but in reality, if you're put in one in a situation like that, it's completely different for you. So it makes sense that yes, while they
Yeah.
play these important roles, they do kind of there's so many factors at play. It's really impossible to provide a good answer to that and an easy answer.
Yes, and it is really hard, and I might get out of like the line of the question, but I just want to take the moment to actually the opportunity to say that sometimes the conservation narrative in Madagascar really blames local people and the local Malagasy for this for the threats, and it's beyond that. It's not like it's the fault of one person. Like I've actually estimated my carbon footprint and compared it to a 500 person community, and my footprint is greater because I fly, because I
Mhm,
do this and I do that. And this is me from Costa Rica. Maybe someone from the UK or from the States is even bigger than that.
mhm,
So it is a systematic issue, and I'm sure that we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But the narrative of overpopulation, about Malagasy people being the whole fault of this situation is wrong, and
mhm,
it's colonialist approach, and
mhm,
it's not what we should be, and this is something that we really try to change the narrative of as much as we can.
mhm. It's yes, and it's to link it back to actually the last episode of the second season of the podcast was we did with Seed Madagascar, and we talked about the famine and the impacts of that. And just in case people haven't listened to that, the famine, for example, in Madagascar is the only famine in the world that is being cited by the United Nations organizations as being caused directly by climate change, not
Hmm.
conflict, not anything else. So it's not an internal issue. It's not something that they have all fallen out with each other and there's a war or anything like that. It is climate change is causing that.
There's no water, so there's no crops, basically.
Yeah. And it doesn't it's hopefully that will make people click actually okay, maybe we do need to change our own actions if we're based in the UK or the US or wherever we are. But we'll see, and I think we'll get into that throughout the series. And yes, we'll definitely talk about it a lot more. I think as we go forward to kind of we talk about the kind of threats to lemurs and things. But before we get to the threats, the last question I had kind of while we're talking on the topic of lemurs and their important role is for you personally. I think as we've said, there's 112 different species. So there's a lot to pick from, and I think there are certainly some which a lot of people know about. The kind of eyes and the ring-tailed lemurs, I think, especially very popular. But for you, if you could highlight any species or any types of lemurs that the listeners might not know about yet, is there any that jump immediately to mind that you would like people to know more about?
Well, I told you that I have different seasons, right?
Yeah.
Well, the current one is the fork mark lemur,
Mhm,
the Fanner furcifer, which is for me super interesting, super cute, and not very popular. It's from the to try to describe it. I actually recommend everybody to Google it, so my description won't be that bad. But it's kind of looks like a squirrel, but no, it's brownish and it has like a fork all over the body. But they're really really cool, and they have little things such as they actually mate for life, and they actually create like a nest in a tree that becomes like their lifelong house and home. So researchers that follow them actually know exactly where they are, and this is pretty rare, unless someone take down the tree, right? And also like males have a huge parenting role, and they're super vocal. I love vocal lemurs. I have a hell of a mutation of the injury call actually, so I love vocal lemurs.
Uh-huh.
And they have like a dental comb that like scrape the gum of the insect holes in trees, which I think is pretty cool as well.
hmm That's yes, and something that I think we should all be trying to. That's my aim for the series is to get as many people as we can to appreciate as many different types of animals as we
Yes.
can. So yes, they do
Yeah.
sound
It's
incredible, and
very
I
easy because you just have to follow our Instagram page because we put so many different pictures of all the lemur species that it's possible to have a picture of. So it's
I
a
I,
good way to start.
I understand the problem because having a show called Pangolin and doing a whole series about pangolin, when you try and describe a pangolin to someone and they look at you like so they're like, is it a lizard? Is it a, and no? Is it a this? Is it no? It's not an armadillo either, but it's like an armadillo, but it's not. It's easier sometimes when you're talking about these incredible animals to just go, just Google a picture and then come
Yeah,
back to me.
just
It's
Google
much
it. Then you come back, pause it, go and come back.
yes. So yes, that's fascinating. Thank you so much for that. And now, yes, we've kind of touched on it throughout your previous answers, and I think now it's time to shift more directly onto kind of tackling the threats that lemurs face and that wildlife and people face, I guess, in Madagascar, and some of those issues. And kind of doing my research for this, I looked at the IUCN website. Always a good resource for when I'm coming up with questions because they have so much on there. But yes, for lemurs, they kind of say that the biggest threats for lemurs are slash and burn agriculture, illegal logging, hunting, and keeping lemurs as pets, all of which you've mentioned. And throughout the series, we have people coming on to talk about some of these issues in a lot more detail. But I wondered for you, kind of in this introductory episode, and to get people started with your kind of thoughts, what would you consider to be the greatest threat to lemurs now?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm super glad about this platform that you gave throughout the series to a lot of Malagasy people coming up to the show and actually talk with them because as a Vasa, how Malagasy people refer to foreigners, um, it is not fair or completely accurate to me talking about these threats such as this because I'm not currently living there. I'm not currently being directed by them. I have certain knowledge, certain experience with the threats.
Mhm,
So it's much easier to get a real response from people in Madagascar because they actually know what the problem really is and what are the solutions. So I
mhm,
really encourage the listeners of this podcast to really make extra attention to these Malagasy voices because they are the really ones that we've been listening to.
mhm,
As for what's the biggest threat for me, I would say that yes, all of the threats are really significant and direct and they're important. The pet trade is real. Um, Habitat loss is something really, really important in Madagascar that's going on. It's really dangerous for some. I know forests 5 years ago that they're not there anymore. And that's for me is really, really shocking to see.
mhm,
But all of we have to really think about the underlying threats that we have as a society, as a world. We have structural and systematic problems that we're not putting nature and the human well-being in the heart of our decision making, and
mhm,
how our economic systems are driven are driven to benefit unfortunately too few. And that's a huge problem because from here it's where everything else is driven. So if we're not addressing these systematic issues, if we're not changing the refocus of how we're seeing our economy, how we value economy, how we value like ecosystem services, mental health, community well-being, we're not going to be able to addressing habitat loss, or we're not going to be addressing climate change as we want to, because we have all of this opposing force that is so huge and so powerful. So this is one of the things that I see as it has potential and it's an advantage from COVID-19,
Mhm.
because with COVID-19 all of the threats in Madagascar has just enhanced and become bigger and stronger.
Mhm.
So I try to be an optimistic, and I try to see as COVID-19 as a way for us in the world to just step back, do a reset, and actually consider what is important and what is coming on along the line if we don't change dramatically how we live.
Mhm.
Because when we're tackling this, if we're changing our intentions and our focus and our purpose, it's going to be much more manageable and achievable to actually address to habitat loss, to actually address climate change.
Mhm. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and it's one of yes, it's one of those things that you it shouldn't have taken a pandemic for us to realize this, but if it
Yes.
takes a pandemic for us to realize this, that might in fact be a good thing, that people reset, reprioritize what's important, and reconnect with nature, reconnect with these things, and reconnect with one another as well, which I think is
Yes.
because
And actually work together and confront these 100 companies that are driving our carbon emissions to the roof, for example.
yeah.
Let's do pressure to our local governments and actually ask for solutions, and use our natural resources in a smart and strategic way, and not as if they are renewable, because we know that they're not. So we have to be a stronger actor as an our citizen role and do pressure when it has to be done.
Mhm. That's yes, and it's something that I think we can all do. It doesn't. I think a lot of people, as soon they kind of check out when they think, "Oh well, it's just me. I can't make a difference if it's just me." But if there's 100 people saying, "Oh, it's just me," or 1,000 people, or 100,000 people all just sitting there saying, "Well, it doesn't make a difference if just me, or if it's just me that acts." That's a lot of people. So if you do these things and
Yeah.
you try and act and, as you say, take on these companies and things, everyone we look at and admire in the world of conservation, they're just one person. So what is the difference between, I don't know, Greta Thunberg and you? I mean, she has managed to get the platform because she's an exceptionally hard worker, but that she could have been any girl from anywhere in the world could have stood up and said those things, and it doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
made a decision and act upon it. It's as
Yes,
simple as
exactly.
that.
Yes, you summarized it much better than I could. So that's um, so yeah. So it's yeah, one of those things that um, yeah, we can all do our bit, and hopefully we can, yeah, push these things forward. And I guess, how should we? I know this is a big question for one person, but how, in your opinion, how should we, as these individual units, how should we? What's the best way for us as these observers to make a difference to Madagascar and to lemurs and to all of these species that live there?
Well, as you said, first of all, we should be talking more about this, geeking out a little bit more on lemurs and their important role in their ecosystems and into human well-being and to global biological importance and value.
Hmm.
We have to talk more about this. Actually, support organizations that are doing really hard work and smart work, and even though with COVID and all the different limitations that they've been having, they haven't stopped working.
Hmm.
Actually support local empowerments in Madagascar. COVID-19 has hit really, really hard. So, for example, ecotourism is almost non-existent in the moment. Borders are closed. So, for example, the Association of Guides from Andasive, a lot of the conservation success of Andasive comes from this association of guides, because there are local people that just came together and said, like, let's do this well. we have the potential to be an ecotourism spot, and it has become. But without tourists, it's more complicated. It's just harder to actually do the work. So there's a bunch of fundraising campaigns, and I invite you all to donate, to donate to the Lemur Conservation Network and to our members. We'll have all that information in our website. We also have a how to help section
Hmm.
that has a lot more options and more information about how you can do it. Also, be very smart when you're a tourist, especially when borders open up. If you go to a hotel and there's a pet lemur, don't go and say why you're leaving.
Hmm.
The same with the restaurants and stuff like that. Don't take pictures with lemurs, please, on your shoulders. That's not good. And I will say that don't please do it with primates because that's a global issue. Having your picture taken with with a lemur on your shoulder has direct negative impacts and a direct connection to the pet trade. And there's our studies that are backing up this. And also there is the potential transmission of diseases, and after COVID, I think we all should be more intelligent about this. um, but yeah, there's a bunch of ways where you can actually do work, and as I said before, have your voice heard and pressure your governments to actually make the correct decisions and take nature into consideration when they're making all the decision making and all the important structures that we're living off.
Hmm.
So be an active citizen, be an active actor of conservation. You don't have to be an ecologist. We're a internationalist and a psychologist here trying to do the work. We all have a space here, and just be up on it and take this space and take it in your hands and do something. There's a lot of ways you can do it.
Hmm. Yes, and it's yeah, it's whether it's writing or drawing or creating art or music, there's always something that you can do. Whether it's and it's interesting and fascinating, and it's yes, I think really really good advice that we can all be involved, and even if it is just casting a vote or making your
Exactly.
political voice, your kind of political opinion known on these things,
Yeah,
also so
exactly.
important.
Because I know it's a matter of privilege to be able to go to Madagascar and volunteer, for example. So
Yeah.
we cannot ask that.
Hmm.
We can do a lot from our own accessibility, from our own privilege, and what we have as a resource.
Hmm.
Just casting the vote has a huge difference.
Yes.
So it's just finding the way to do it and
Yes.
wanting to do it.
Hmm. And yes, I think it's great advice, and so yeah, perfectly well put. That it's kind of and so passionately said as well, which I really appreciate. Is like we can all do this, and we can all make a difference if we just put our minds to it and do these things and put ourselves out there. And yes, thank you very much for that, because that is a really interesting and good piece of advice, and I think everyone will appreciate that. uh, Kind of bringing it back, we kind of focused on the kind of what you can do and the animals that are there, and we've kind of talked about all of this. But I wanted to talk for you personally, I guess, having done a lot of this work and having made and actively fighting for these changes, it must be incredibly rewarding as well. It can be hard and it can be difficult, but I think in conservation, it's important we remember a lot of the time the good things and the positive things that come out of these struggles. And I wondered what some of the most rewarding moments perhaps for you were that have come out of this kind of journey that you've been on.
Well, you're right. I feel so immensely privileged and grateful for having the opportunity to be able to do this work. Not only because the LCN team is great, so Lynn and Sen are and I were basically the core of the NGO,
Hmm.
but we have such an amazing team of volunteers, and LCN has always have incredible friends that help us, support us, and guide us throughout the line. So it's I feel really grateful and privileged to be working alongside such incredible people, such smart people, and passionate and committed to the cause. So that is really motivating and something I'm really grateful of. Also, I had the opportunity to work and get to know our different members, and this is something really interesting because I'm learning from different approaches, from different lemur species, from the communities, from different local leaders. It's been a huge learning experience, and I'm
Hmm.
really grateful for that. I'm also feel really grateful to have the opportunity to use my privilege for the cause, to be able to use what I can do, what the capacities that I can bring, and the effort that I can do to actually try to do whatever it's possible, um, to conserve lemur species and help them thrive throughout the line, and
Mhm.
try to actually have an effect to Madagascar. Madagascar has done so much for me as a person
Mhm.
that it just feels like a responsibility just to try to do something for my part, whatever I can. So having that opportunity to learn and to engage with such incredible people and learn from these so cool animals, that I feel really really grateful of the opportunity of working with the LCN, and we're just looking forward to all of our plans and how we're growing, and we have no idea where we're going to be in 5 years, but I'm sure that it's going to be in a very exciting place.
Mhm. It's yes, it's really really exciting, and I think it's having spoken to different people who are involved in the preparation for this series, getting to kind of research everything and look into everything and all these different issues and all these different solutions. I think the thing that stands out to me, and I think you've kind of summarized it really well there, is this kind of passion behind everybody and just wanting to do good and do really well and kind of do the best for a country and for species that have inspired you is really really interesting and really fascinating and empowering and important. And yes, thank you
Yeah,
very much
it's
for yeah.
yeah, no, it's been highly rewarding to actually have a platform to give voices, to give a voice to a lot of unheard voices, to give a space to a lot of unheard voices, to actually invite them and write a blog post, or to have a collaboration with with that person and do, I don't know, a webinar or something, like to give that space and actually get to have those voices, access and engagement to so many other people is really really rewarding.
And I think yes, that's the perfect way to almost bring us to the end, because I think it leaves the listeners. I think it's been a very intense. I think 45 minutes of chat that we've had, because there's so much packed in there for them to think about and digest, and it's and I think you've summed it up really nicely, given them lots of little areas of curiosity, and we've touched on lots of issues and given lots of bits of advice that are really, really interesting. And I think we've got them hopefully excited for the future. If they're listening and kind of want to learn more about anything we've talked about, or want to do more, or want to kind of follow your work, we've got the episodes coming up with all of the different aspects that we'll go into a bit deeper. But I also wanted to ask you, especially given your last answer, where can people go if they want to follow the Lemur Conservation Network and their work and everything that you do? Where can we go?
So it's www.lemurconservationnetwork.org, and then we have, you can find us in Facebook, social media, Instagram, and Twitter as Lemur Conservation Network. We have a very active science communication team that it's doing incredible work. So a big shout out to them. um, so we really try to share and showcase our members' work, to have a little bit more of education and awareness on lemurs, what's going on. And in our website, you can find more information about our members, about lemur conservation. We have a bunch of blogs that talks about various of topics. Even if you're considering going to Madagascar when the borders are opening up, we have resources to help you start planning your trip. There's also a shop section where you can actually buy something that our members try to sell in order for their own work. We have also our donation information on our website. And there's also the very important how to help section, which I really encourage you all to just go and check it out.
Perfect. And yes, I think that brings us very nicely to the end of today's interview. So I just want to say a massive thank you so much, because I think in terms of information per minute of podcast, I think this is probably the most intense and the most interesting kind of most kind of information we've got in an hour. It's been really fascinating, really interesting. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.
No, no, thank you for having me. I love talking about this, and actually redirecting people to the correct channels for more information, because that's what we try to do, right? But so thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.